Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 536, 536, September 1st, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's Saturday. Wow. The Labor Day weekend. Well, hopefully you all are going to get a little break, and I know we're getting a little break to hopefully celebrate the Labor Day weekend, cook some burgers and some steaks, and just kick back and hopefully relax a little bit for a few days. Hopefully you all get to do that. Let's go ahead and get to the news. And the top story, I think, in my mind, which actually broke late last night after I had done my Thursday video, this popped up on the radar. So it was kind of one of them leaks, and I thought, wow, this is major, and especially with the timing. You know, whenever something is dropped just before a holiday, late at night on a holiday, before a holiday weekend, you think, hey, that's bad news, right? That's when they drop that kind of stuff they don't want people to pay much attention to, because they know they'll be busy preparing for, in this case, a 3-day weekend, 4-day weekend that a lot of people take. So I actually expected to wake up today and hear this story just dominating the news, and maybe it's because it's a Labor Day weekend, it's not getting much play. Maybe next week when Tuesday rolls around, it'll start taking hold. But I'm talking about the revelation that we found out who Bruce Orr was, who he said knew about him, the people he said that knew that he was getting this information from Christopher Steele and passing it to the FBI, and that he was passing it on to them. And we learned those people, of course, we learned Comey, McCabe, and Peter's been stroking us, Loose Lisa Page, Andy McCabe, and Andrew Weissmann. Andrew Weissmann, the main pit bull for Uncle Bob the Executioner and the Hillary donor posse. Now, what's interesting about this is that at the time that Bruce Orr was passing this information to Weissmann, this was prior to Weissmann joining the Mueller team. At that time, he was still the head guy over at the Department of Justice, head of the criminal fraud division. So Bruce Orr is passing this information to Weissmann as well as McCabe, Peter's been stroking us, and Loose Lisa Page. And I think that Loose Lisa Page has lied about this. This certainly majorly incriminates McCabe, because Bruce Orr said, in addition to all this, that this would mean that McCabe knew that Bruce Orr was getting this information from Christopher Steele, coming through the back door and giving it to the FBI. He was also saying that he was telling them, Bruce Orr saying, hey, I'm also telling them that there's a credibility issue with this information. But McCabe used it anyway. So in addition to all the other things, McCabe probably is the most damaged by this, and you would expect that this would certainly result in at least 3 or 4 different criminal violations, in addition to the other violations that Andrew McCabe is facing. It's just no one seems to be interested in prosecuting him. But let's get back to Weissmann. So we learn that Bruce Orr is passing this information to Weissmann when Weissmann is actually over at the Department of Justice Criminal Fraud Division before he joins the Mueller team. And the information he's giving him, obviously, is to do with Manafort, and probably even something on Flynn as well. Now, if you trace this back and follow where this information is coming from, and where a lot of this information came from that found its way into the dossier, we know it found its way there because of these illegal 702 queries that were being done by private contractors, one of which were certain Fusion GPS. So to me, what this tells me is that Weissmann is getting this stuff from Bruce Orr, which a lot of it came from the illegal 702 FISA queries. It finds its way to Weissmann. Then Weissmann joins the Mueller team, and he brings all this information with him, and it's a lot of that information that was used to prosecute certainly Manafort, and likely Mike Flynn as well. So my thoughts last night when I read this was, wow, this should certainly revoke a response from Flynn's lawyers and also from especially Manafort's lawyers. Because here, if you're Manafort's lawyers, you're saying, wait a minute, so the evidence that's being used against my client was collected illegally. It was collected illegally. It was the whole process, the whole chain of the evidence was illegal. It's not how the FBI conducts criminal investigations. You have a foreign agent who's being paid by multiple people, obviously Mr. Deripaska paying him to lobby for him, the Right Reverend Clinton paying him via Confusion GPS. He's passing this stuff to the State Department, giving it directly to the FBI. The FBI is paying him as well. Then they fire him. That happens later, but at the time, FBI is paying Christopher Steele. We didn't know that at that time, but we do now. So the entire collection of this evidence, and the fact that a lot of it probably came from these illegal 702 FISA queries, makes it illegal evidence. The way it was accumulated was illegal. The evidence itself was false. So I would think that my thoughts last night were that Manafort's lawyers would be all over this, and that Flynn's lawyers might be interested in this as well. But today, I'm not really hearing much about it. Okay, so I don't know if it's just because it's, a 4-day, 3 or 4-day weekend, Labor Day weekend, it's just nobody's interested, and maybe on Tuesday this will blow up and we'll start hearing more about it. But the reason I really hope that someone pursues this is not just because of that angle, the fact that it goes directly to the method of collection of the evidence used against Manafort, possibly Michael Flynn, but because it brings into the forefront these illegal FISA 702 FISA queries, which, I've done everything I can do. But if you look around, no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to talk about it. Joe DeGeneva and, what's her name, Sidney Powell are the only two people I've heard go on Fox and talk about it one time, about the illegal 702 FISA queries. One time, and they don't bring it up anymore. Now, I've heard Joe DeGeneva on other, and Powers, I've heard him on other radio shows, other shows talking about it, but when they go on Fox, they don't say anything about it anymore. You don't hear any of the members of the Freedom Caucus talking about it. You don't hear hardly anyone talking about it. I wrote 2 personal letters to Jim Jordan, to his local office here in Ohio. Handwritten letters. Sent them directly to his office with a postage stamp. On 2 different occasions. About 6 months apart. Saying, hey, Jim Jordan, I don't ever hear you talking about this, but you need to look into this 99-page FISA court document by Judge Collier, pointing out these private contractors accessing the database, because this will get you closer to the origins of when all this started, because this was all happening began as early as late October, early November of 2015, and it was going on until Mike Rogers discovered it and shut it down, which would have been early in 2016, February, March. It's a critical thing, and it also will help them dial in to the secret 6 agency or special task force by John Brennan, which Peter's Been Strokinus was a part of. And it's even been alleged now that Peter's Been Strokinus is actually in the CIA as well as the FBI. So this is one of the main reasons, the 2 reasons obviously, is that it could be good information for Manafort and possibly Michael Flynn's lawyers to have this information, but also because it will force into the conversation something that no one seems to want to talk about. And I think the reason is because, again, this would expose the fraud that was going on with the FISA process. And for whatever reason, even Republicans, even the ones investigating Spygate, really want to protect FISA. For whatever reason, they want to protect the FISA law. And this would probably do a lot of harm and a lot of damage to the whole idea of a FISA court, because this shows the clear violations and how easy it was done and how they were able to cover it up. And it's still going on to this day, even with a lot of guys that I like. They don't want to talk about it. So I would like to see this come to the forefront, because obviously it could be helpful to Manafort's lawyers to show that the information was collected illegally, but more importantly to me is that it would bring into the conversation these illegal 702 queries that were happening back in the fall of 2015 into early 2016 by private contractors, of which there are many. They're all blacked out. You can't see, we know that the private contractors, it says the private contractors, but it blacks out the names. We were almost certain that one of them was Confusion GPS. It's possible CrowdStrike may have been involved in that. It's possible that Comey's friend may have been involved in that. But there was multiple, more than a half a dozen blacked out names there. So it's obviously was somewhere in a half dozen to a dozen range of private entities that were given access to the NSA database via the FBI systems. So this is why it's kind of important to me, and I would like to see this come out. So for whatever reason, it didn't make the big, bombshell that I thought it would be today. I was expecting today this would be all over the place, but it's really not getting much play. And I think that may have something to do with the fact that a lot of these talk show hosts and stuff were on vacation today. They had fill-in hosts. A lot of people are not paying attention. They're regurgitating yesterday's stories because there are people who generate new information or on their 3 or 4 day vacation or whatever. So hopefully on Tuesday, when things get back to normal, we'll begin focusing on this issue of Bruce Orr feeding Andrew Weissmann. And this should be it for the Mueller investigation. Certainly should be it for Weissmann. He should be fired immediately. And Uncle Bob had to know how that information was collected that Weissmann brought with him to the dance. This should end the Mueller investigation, as so many other things should have ended the Mueller investigation. And it should certainly be the end of Andrew Weissmann on this particular issue. We'll keep following this and see what happens on Tuesday. Trump did a great rally last night in Indiana. I don't know if my sister and brother-in-law were there or not, but they live in Indiana and they never miss a Trump rally. This one was in Evansville. Bit of a drive, but they've made longer drives. So, very interesting. He continues to really step it up, talking about the fact that last night he said, again, he keeps repeating, he's gone from I may have to get involved kind of casually. Now he's really forcefully saying, I think I'm going to have to get involved. If I don't see something happen at the Department of Justice or FBI, if I don't see these people being seriously investigated, I am going to have to jump in there. I may have to take it over. I may have to take over this investigation. That's what he's saying now. But he also was talking about the Right Reverend Clinton, and they started the lock her up chant, and he says, so he's talking to the crowd, he says, do you see what Hillary is getting away with? Do you see what she's getting away with? Well, do you think she's going to continue to get away with it? He says, we'll see. So he's again doubling down. He's getting more forceful with both of these topics. The fact that he's not happy with what's going on at the DOJ and the FBI, that Sessions or whoever in his mind, okay, I know there's other theories on this, but at least in his mind, unless it's all a charade, he's really drawing down on these two things. The fact that these corrupt people at the FBI and DOJ are not being investigated or prosecuted or anything else, and also Hillary Clinton getting away with all her crimes regarding the emails. So he continues to hammer these points home at every rally, and I don't think he's doing it just to get the crowd riled up. I think he has every intention after the midterm elections. I think he's given Sessions and Wray to the midterm elections and Rodenstein to the midterms. And if he doesn't see some action, I think they're gone. Rodenstein, Wray, and Sessions may all be gone right after the midterms if he doesn't see some action. And I do believe that he's got a plan. He wouldn't keep teasing people with this stuff about Hillary unless he actually had a plan or knew that there was something going on, that there was a real investigation which is going to indict the Rotten Reverend. And I think also, when you look at the Rotten Reverend Clinton, just as I told you many, many, many months ago, she's going into the sick old lady routine. I think she's getting probably people whispering in her ear and saying, hey, Trump's going to be bringing the heat on you. You better prepare yourself. You better get your lawyers together, whatever. He's not joking. He's actually going to drop the hammer on you. Because now she's playing the sick old lady routine, which is exactly what I said she would do. To try to say, look, I'm just a pitiful, sick old lady, and you're going to go after me? That is what the Right Reverend Clinton's plan. That's how she always does things. So, and you can see that she continues. She knows that she's on camera. But every time you see her in the last 3 or 4 months, she's got people helping her walk, people helping her do all sorts of things. She's looking really bad, looking really feeble. She's wearing these heavy clothes. You can see this back brace sticking out. Now, she's not stupid. She knows that this is all being captured on camera and that people are talking about it. She wants this stuff out there so that when the hammer drops, all this evidence will be there, video evidence will be there, of how sickly she is, how weak and feeble she is, so that when she admits herself into the hospital, when someone over at the DOJ picks up the phone and says, hey, tomorrow they're dropping the indictments on you, that very minute she'll find herself in a hospital with doctors around her, and they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't talk to her. She's going through serious medical situation, and so you're not allowed to investigate her or talk to her, interview her, or whatever. And then she'll play the sick old lady routine. That's exactly what I think is going on here. Now, as far as the FBI director, I know he's looking at getting rid of Sessions and Rodenstein, but I didn't know about Wray. I thought he might leave Wray alone, but it's apparent now that he may not. He may be considering no shit Sherlock Christopher Wray as well. Now, there's a name that's been popping up as a possible replacement for Jeff Sessions. Many of you people will remember him from back in the Clinton administration, and that name would be Louis Freeh. Louis Freeh. Of course, Louis Freeh was a longtime FBI DOJ employee. He eventually became a judge. Clinton made him FBI director. Clinton later said it was the biggest mistake he ever made. And when Louis Freeh was asked about that comment, he said that he would wear that as a badge of honor. So clearly, Clinton was very frustrated. He appointed Louis Freeh, who at the time Clinton would call Judge Freeh. And it was Louis Freeh, the FBI director, that allowed all these investigations into Bill Clinton to happen. The investigation into Castle Grande and Whitewater, the investigation into TravelGate, the investigations into his sexual deviance. All these things were happening under Louis Freeh. So he's known as being a straight shooter and that type of thing, and a straight-up player. But so he would be a hell of a lot better than Jeff Sessions, unless Jeff Sessions actually has a secret game going. Yeah, he would probably be a lot better than Sessions, and he's been in the job before. But my feeling is still I'd like to see someone completely outside the DOJ and FBI, someone completely on the outside of the swamp, someone who's never been in the swamp before. You could probably do a lot worse than Louis Freeh. I don't know what his political affiliations are, Republican or Democrat, or if he's anything really. I don't know, but I do remember him reasonably well. I think he's probably a straight shooter, but whether or not he'd be willing to come in and clean house at the DOJ and FBI, I mean, that's his roots. I mean, that's where his entire career has been. So I still have my doubts about replacing. If he's going to replace Sessions or Wray or Rodenstein, I would really love to see him go outside the swamp and bring in someone else. But if you are going to bring in someone who's had a history of lurking in the swamp, maybe Louis Freeh wouldn't be the worst choice. He would be a hell of a lot better than what we're getting now, unless there is a master plan going on and we don't know about it, other than what we're being told by Q. So the left-wing media believes the dossier is mostly true. They continue to say, I just saw it on MSNBC not more than 2 days ago, a panel of people on MSNBC saying, the dossier has been proven mostly to be true, which is complete bullshit. It's been proven almost 90% to be false. The only thing that's true in the dossier is this open source stuff that Nelly got from reading Russian newspapers, or any newspaper. Trump went to Moscow for the Miss USA pageant. That's true. He stayed in this hotel. Well, that's true. Everything else is a lie. But they keep saying it's mostly true. So let's go ahead and see if we can reverse that a little bit. If I'm to take what MSNBC and CNN and all the rest, BuzzFeed and all the rest, Vox and all those people, Daily Beast, if I'm to take what they say to be true, that the dossier has been mostly proven true, and we know that the sources identified in the dossier are a senior Russian foreign ministry figure, a former top-level Russian intel officer still active in the Kremlin, a former senior intelligence officer, and a former top Russian intel officer. If this is all true, as these people are saying, and these were really the sources of the information in the dossier used by what's alleged to be Christopher Steele. I don't believe that, but that's what everyone believes, so we'll just go with that. Then what we're actually saying is that means that the Rotten Reverend Clinton and the DNC paid a foreign former British spy who used Russians to run a smear campaign on Trump and his campaign, i.e. Russian collusion by the Rotten Reverend Clinton and used by the Obama administration to launch a coup, a frame-up against Trump. That's what we'd be saying, okay? If we're to accept that what the left wing is telling us is that most of the dossier is true. Well, if it's true, then it's true that all these former and still some active Russian intel and government officials were used by Steele as sources to put together the dossier. That would make the Rotten Reverend Clinton complicit via Confusion GPS and Christopher Steele. That means that they were using Russians to put together a smear campaign to run this frame-up operation against Trump and his team. Exactly what they're accusing Trump of. You see. So, this is how we should look at this. Not only did they use this so-called intelligence from these Russian officials put together by a foreign former agent, which is illegal again. You're not allowed to use a foreign agent in an American political campaign. But they went farther than that. As a part of the coup, they used it to go to the FISA court and lie to them. They used it to launch agent provocateurs to run frame-up or set-up entrapment operations on people in Trump's campaign to affect the outcome of a presidential election. There you go, MSNBC and CNN and all the rest. If it's true what you say, then it's very clear that, as I just pointed out, the dossier proves the collusion with the Obama administration, the Rotten Reverend Clinton campaign, and all these foreign agents in a coup attempt against Trump. That's what it tells us, if we buy the left-wing line. My friends, get ready for more fake polling. Do you remember back in the 2016 election, one of the big things right after the election? How could we have been so wrong? How could the polls have been so wrong? How could they be so far off? I don't know how many of you were watching my videos back then, because I wasn't called TowerGate or anything like that, but I was doing videos, and I would look at these Trump rallies, and he'd have thousands and thousands of people outside who couldn't even get in because the inside of the arenas were packed. Then you'd see the Rotten Reverend Clinton in a high school gymnasium with a bunch of people bust in, a few hundred, maybe 1,000 here and there. And I was saying, wait a minute, there's got to be something going on here. And I've been watching these elections for a long time. These pollsters have been doing polling for a long time. And there's just no way that this polling could have been that far off. No way. The polling could have been that far off. Maybe you have one here, an outlier here and there, but it was all the major polls. All these polling firms have been doing this for a very long time. And they normally get pretty damn close. So it became obvious to me at some point that these were not real polls. These were fake polls. And the purpose of these fake polls, they were using fake polls to try to give people the impression that, oh, nobody's going to vote for Trump. That's what they were trying to do, was say, see, the Rotten Reverend Clinton, according to all the polls, is going to destroy Trump. He has zero chance. That was to put doubt into the minds of people who might want to vote for Trump and might make them go, wait a minute, I was going to vote for Trump, but gosh, 90% of the people in the country don't want to vote for him. They're going to vote for Hillary. Maybe they know something I don't know. Maybe I should go along with the sheep and go along with the crowd and not vote for Trump. This is the entire thing. These polls weren't wrong. These polls were faked on purpose to use them as part of a propaganda campaign to try to get people to believe that Trump had no chance or that there was something wrong with them if they actually considered voting for him, because they were feeding fake-ass polls throughout the entire period hoping that that would cause people to change the way they vote. They were using polls, weaponizing polling. Weaponizing the polling. Now you would think that after failing miserably at that, that they wouldn't do it again. But I can tell you right now, I'm seeing it all over again. They are doubling down with the fake polls, and here they come again. So I'm telling you, you can expect to hear between now and November all kinds of polls. Oh, the Democrats are gonna win the House. Trump's numbers are really down. People love Sessions. That they think that Sessions is more popular than Trump. If Trump fires Sessions, he'll be in big trouble because all the polls say that people prefer Sessions over Trump, and they don't think Trump should fire Sessions. And you're hearing all kinds of things about, oh, this candidate down in Florida, the socialist who just won, he's going to beat DeSantis because that's what the polls are telling us. He's got a 13-point lead over DeSantis. They're using the same damn fake poll strategy, doubling down on it. Maybe they think they just didn't do enough fake pollings. So maybe we'll see the same thing we saw before, but only tenfold. Goodness gracious. Excuse me. Sucked in a lot of dirt today. You're not going to believe this. You are not going to believe this. Yeah, you probably will. You probably will at this point. Unbelievable. You got to hand it to Judicial Watch and Tom Fitton. Man, oh man. We are so lucky to have Tom Fitton and Judicial Watch. Based on, okay, let me back up here. They have many lawsuits filed to get information. One of the lawsuits that they've had is documents regarding Carter Page and the FISA warrant. The applications. They have been to court 3 times. The second time they went to court on this issue, because Judicial Watch was suing the DOJ because they refused to produce the documents, the judge actually yelled at them and said, hey, this is the second time we've been here. I'm telling you, you've got to produce the documents. Stop dragging your feet. So they're back in court Thursday. And the DOJ comes in and tells the judge and Judicial Watch that they cannot produce the documents that are being requested because they do not exist. They do not exist. And what documents are we talking about? We're talking about the documents of the hearings for the 4 FISA warrants against Carter Page. So the DOJ comes into court and says they don't exist. We can't produce them because they don't exist. There were no hearings. No hearings were held by the FISA court to get the surveillance warrant on Carter Page. The warrant applications, all 4, were based solely on written submissions. No hearings. That would include, I assume, the Woods hearings that were supposed to happen. Nothing on that either. That's the law. They're supposed to have the Woods hearings. Not only did they not have, the FISA court did not have hearings, there were no Woods hearings. Nothing. Just written applications. Here you go. Judicial Watch is making this point perfectly clear. They're saying, hey, they're telling us there were no documents of hearings because there weren't any. Judicial Watch is now saying Trump must declassify everything having to do with the Carter Page FISA warrants and FISA applications, because in doing so, they will prove, just as he learned in court today, that there are no documents about hearings for the 4 FISA court warrants on Carter Page, because there were no FISA court hearings. Nothing but applications. And that means that the Woods process was not followed either. Man, oh man. Holy smoke. Woo! It's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. They got 4 FISA warrants without any hearings, and they did not follow the process of having following the Woods Amendment. They didn't do any of it. They wrote up false, phony applications, withholding lots of information from the FISA court judges, and gave it to the FISA court judges, and they signed off on it. And no hearings. My. It was not a mistake by Darrell Issa. It was not a mistake when he said that Nellie Orr started working for Confusion GPS in the fall of 2015. Not a mistake. Bruce Orr told them his wife started working for Confusion GPS in the late fall of 2015. We have been told up to this point that Nellie Orr wasn't brought on until April, late April, right after Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele's brought on, and the very next week or two later, we get Nellie Orr. Why do we believe that to be true? I think it was based on the fact that when Nunes was able to force Perkins and Coy to produce their documents showing who paid for the dossier, I think in there they saw the payments to Nellie Orr. I think that's how we learned about Nellie Orr. So if that's when the payments started for Nellie Orr back in April of 2016, then who the hell was paying her before that? Was she working for free? I don't think so. That means that Nellie Orr would have been working for Confusion GPS at the very time that all these 702 FISA queries were being done. Was Nellie Orr also doing these FISA queries, and where was she doing them through? The DOJ NSD, where her husband was the number 4 man and the highest ranking bureaucrat. Everyone over Bruce Orr was an elected official. He was the highest ranking bureaucrat at the DOJ NSD, number 4 man. His wife working for Fusion GPS. At the same time, all these 702 FISA queries are happening. Exactly at the same time. I'm telling you, this goes back to the fall of November 15, the fall of 2015. My oh my. 2 of Uncle Bob the Executioner's posse have quit the team. Ryan Dickey and Brian Richardson have left the Mueller team. No reason why. Guess who was sitting in the front seat, in the front row, at the funeral affairs in D.C. for Senator Magoo? Who do you think was sitting in the front row? A lot of people sitting in the front row. A lot of dignitaries, a lot of people like that. Rod Rodenstein. Rod Rodenstein was sitting in the front row at the Magoo funeral event in D.C. on Thursday. What do all the following things have in common? The Rotten Reverend Clinton's emails hacked by China. The Mueller investigation. The witch hunt. The Rotten Reverend Clinton's email investigation. The Wiener laptop investigation. The Trump-Russia investigation. What do all those have in common? Peters Ben Strokanus was the lead investigator in every one of them. Paul Sperry wrote an article today saying that Mueller is trying to hold out until the Democrats can take back the Congress. Typically what happens when you have these types of special counsels, when they get 60 days out from an election, they kind of go into pause mode so they don't affect the elections. Sperry's suggesting that's not going to happen. A lot of people believe that within the next couple of days, Mueller would write his final report, and then Giuliani would write one representing Trump. But it appears now that that report may not be coming because Uncle Bob may not be shutting it down. He's going to continue right up to Election Day and then drop some sort of an October surprise, late in October, a week before the election. That's what we're looking at. Little Marco Rubio, who I do not like, wants to rename a federal building after Senator Magoo. Magoo was the 3rd most unpopular senator, according to recent polls. The 3rd most unpopular. I think we should name the IRS building after Mr. Magoo. After all, it was his right-hand man, Mr. Kerner, that Magoo sent in to teach Lois Lerner how to go after those Tea Party groups. Why not the IRS building? That'd be a good place to name after Magoo.